to the Almighty, I declare open the convocation.
On behalf of all of us here at SDMIMD, Sri Dharmasala Manjunateshwara Institute for Management Development, I have great pleasure in welcoming you all for the 19th annual convocation. A very brief presentation about the activities that happened in SDMIMD during 2013-14. We are happy that this year we were able to start the PGCPM program. In the past, SDM has been concentrating basically on its flagship 2-year full-time program. But going to the demand of corporate executives in my, we had started certificate programs in management some years back. One difficulty with those certificate programs was that it was not recognized as equivalent to PGDM and MBA. So in association with IMA, we floated a 2-year full part-time PGDM program. Along with that, a certificate program called PGCPM. So the participants could actually get 2 degrees with 1 orientation. We hope to sort of strengthen this program in the years to come. The most notable thing, heartening thing as far as SDMIMD is concerned in 2013-14 was the A double star rating which was given by CRISIL.
Chairman's Distinguished Student Gold Medal goes to Mr. Varun Kumar. The winner of the Ankur Gupta Memorial Gold Medal for Best Overall Performance is Mr. Deepak Nesarika. Ankur Gupta Memorial Alumni Gold Medal for Excellent Performance in Finance goes to Mr. Vasudev Naik. The winner of the Gold Medal for Excellent Performance in Marketing is once again Mr. Varun Kumar. The Gold Medal for Excellent Performance in Human Resources Management goes to Ms. Jyotika Kamdar. The Gold Medal for Excellent Performance in Systems goes to Ms. Purti Gowda. And the winner of the Gold Medal for Excellent Performance in Operations is once again Mr. Varun Kumar. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Gayatri, Dr. K.R.S. Murthy, Professor Prabhakar, Professor Dr. Parsuraman, Dr. Satish Chandra, Sri Guru, Ms. Neetu Ganpati. Teachers, parents, students particularly, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor, it's a privilege, it's a pleasure to be here for the annual Convocation 2014. I'll be brief in my commencement speech to you today because I can imagine the excitement that is building up inside of you. This is hardly a time to listen to a long talk. I know you are on your way to more celebrations after making the parlors of Mysore particularly rich in the last 24 hours. I'll just tell you 4 stories. The first story I want to tell you came to my mind when my wife Sushmita and myself were checking into the Regalis Hotel this afternoon to freshen up before coming here. My association with that hotel goes back to a long time. In 1990, when I came to work for Mr. Azim Premji, and Wipro was a not well-known global company, I used to come regularly to the Mysore plant here. And then one fine morning, I was told to go and set up Wipro's office in the Silicon Valley. Now, this was way back in 1990. And because of the new assignment, I was asked to escort the Consul General of the United States of America, who was new and wanted to come and see Wipro's manufacturing facilities. So this was a very important moment for me. I was about 30. Not everybody gets the honor. And this is the great thing about working for Wipro. The toughest job, the most glamorous jobs, the best jobs were given to people who are still not eligible to do it if you went by normal standards of education and experience. So here I was being asked to chaperone the Consul General of the United States of America's Chennai consulate. I drove down from Bangalore after packing all my clothes. I was particular to make sure that I'm carrying a jacket, carrying a tie, and everything else. Came and checked in rather late at night at what used to be called the Southern Star Hotel at that time. I was so tired that I slept off, but I had given myself enough time so that in the morning I am there at the plant well before the Consul General and his entourage would arrive. Now, in the morning I got ready. I was in a generally very happy state of mind, proud state of mind, eager to go and do my job. And I dressed up. Then I realized that I have forgotten to pack my shoes. Because I was driving down from Bangalore, my typical habit is if I'm on a long distance drive, I would seldom wear shoes because they're not necessarily very comfortable. And we're talking about the pre-air conditioned car days. So I was wearing a pair of slippers and the shoe was, I thought, packed in the suitcase that I had completely forgotten. So 7:30 in the morning, I realized I have everything, but I don't have a pair of shoes. So what do you do? Now these are days where there were no cell phones, so it's not like I can call somebody, wake him up in Mysore and say, get me a pair of shoes. So I'm in a state of panic and I called up the reception. Mysore doesn't wake up before 10 o'clock anyway. So nobody is supposed to do anything earth-shaking in Southern Star Hotel at that time. And the sleepy receptionist says, what can I do to help you? I said, what is the earliest time that a shoe store opens in Mysore? There was a long silence which answered the question. So I came down and I was very distraught. Now this young man who was behind the reception looked at me and said, "Sir, is everything okay?" I said, "Yeah, everything is okay. I have a very important visitor and I don't have a pair of shoes." So he looked at me and then he said, "What is your shoe size?" I was startled with that question. Shoe size. We're talking about a man in 1990 who must not be more than a high school graduate. I looked at him and said, "It is 9," and it was like, I'm talking to myself. Then he said, "Sir, if you don't mind, I've just finished my night shift. My shoe size is 9. I can give you my pair of shoes." I wanted to hug him. And he gave me his pair of shoes and of course his socks, which he put on the night before. And I put on his shoes and socks, and you may be laughing right now, but at that time I was thanking God, saying that you have saved my day. So I went there. To receive the Consul General, showed him around the Wipro plant, and then I came back. He wasn't there because his night shift was over. I packed his shoes nicely. I couldn't even wash his socks because I was checking out and going back to Bangalore. I wrote a small thank you note and I went back. This was a great lesson for me because it's not about the qualification and the training of that man. It was about his empathy. In life, empathy is very important. Just as we pick up the qualification, just as we pick up the experience, just as we pick up the trappings of greatness, we should never lose sight of empathy. I went back to Bangalore and I didn't know how to thank him, so I bought a bunch of brand new socks and then again with a thank you note sent it across to him. But I made a very fundamental mistake. The mistake I made came to my mind today vividly when we were checking in. I should have remembered his name. And I should have, after all these years, gone and found out where is he, how is he, and how is he doing. So this is my first story for you. This is a story in Mysore. I want to tell you my second story. So I went to the United States and came back after 3 years. And this time, I was appointed as the Chief Executive of Wipro's Global R&D. I happened to be a student of political science. I had no idea about, the intricacies of integrated circuit design and coding operating systems and writing device drivers and so on. So there were 80 plus geeks and nerds in Wipro's R&D, which was doing state-of-the-art work, and here am I being imposed on them. But for a reason. This R&D was a cost center. The charter was to make it a profit center. This R&D was a domestically focused R&D. The charter was to make it a global R&D that would work with global companies to become a lab on hire. So I was given this task. And you are not an R&D guy if you don't detest a management type. So they first proved their R&D capability on me by saying that we are not impressed. So what do? At that time, the director of IIM Bangalore was Dr. K.R.S. Murthy. So I had heard about this Gandhian and I was lost anyway. So when you are lost, you have to go back to your teachers. So I went back to Dr. K.R.S. Murthy, rather I went to Dr. K.R.S. Murthy and I said, "Sir, please come and throw some holy water on these guys. And I want you to come and talk to them because I think these are brilliant people. I think they're capable of going and winning the world, but something is not working." So Dr. K.R.S. Murthy may not remember, but he came. And there used to be a hotel called Guest Line Hotel in Atibele on the outskirts of Bangalore. So I got these people for a 3-day offsite and Dr. K.R.S. Murthy came and spoke to them. He asked that group a very simple question. He said, "Can you tell me the names of the current and last 2 Japanese prime ministers?" I'm sure 99% people in this audience wouldn't be able to answer that question. So there's dead silence. And these are the brightest and best people that you can think of. So just tell me the last two and the current Japanese Prime Minister. After half a minute of uncomfortable silence, Dr. K.R.S. Murthy broke the silence and said, precisely, the intent was not to get the names out of you, but the intent was to tell you a very simple thing, and that is, if I were to tell you to name 5 Japanese companies, in an instance, you will tell me the names of those 5 Japanese companies. If I tell to a child outside, a high school student outside, to tell me the names of 5 Japanese companies, even that child will be able to tell those names. The point Dr. K.R.S. Murthy was making is that the time is over when a nation will be known because of its political leadership. The nations of the world will be known because of the institutions that get produced out of a country. So it's not just about who's the Prime Minister, who's the President, and who will be the next Prime Minister, President of India. Those are important. But even more important is what is the quality of institutions that a country like India is going to produce. Then he went on to say something very fundamental. He said, look, you are here not just to build a career. You are here to build an institution. Now, many of us professionally qualified people don't understand that we have 2 responsibilities. We have a responsibility to build a career, and we have a greater responsibility to build an institution. Because if India does not succeed, businesses will fail anyway. The third story is a story of resilience, and I want to share that with you. This happened a few years back. I live in a place called HSR Layout in Bangalore, and my office at that time used to be in Banashankari, which is a fair distance away. And in peak traffic, it would take a good maybe 40 minutes, 45 minutes. And that's a long time, and it's a good time to reflect, good time to think, good time to look around. And one day, while on my way to work, the car stopped at a busy intersection. And it's a 4-way intersection. This is in BTM layout. Those of you who know what that location is, there's a main intersection there. And as the car stood there, I looked to my right and found that the cart of a push cart owner, which was laden with tomatoes, had just fallen over. So here's a 4-point crossing. The traffic is standing still, and his tomatoes are all over the place. And then the light changed. From red, the light became green. In a city, nobody waits for anybody. So the cars went over. What was tomato earlier now became pulp on the road. And I looked at the face of the man whose cart had tippled, had fallen on one side with his entire day's inventory gone. And I was thinking, what will he do now? My mind went back to people like you and me, highly professionally competent and qualified. We worry all the time about our promotion, about our increment, about our next placement while we are in the campus. If we have nothing to worry, we want to worry about our children and their future. And I was thinking right this moment, what is this man worrying about? Place yourself in his shoes. He probably got up somewhere around 3 o'clock in the morning, took an empty push cart to the wholesale market somewhere in the border of Hosur and Bangalore, bought the tomatoes, pushed the tomatoes back all the way from that Hosur-Bangalore border for about a couple of hours. Even at that early morning must have sweated. And then he was on his way. He would have sold his tomatoes, paid back the loan that he would have taken at a very, very high interest rate from the money lender. And then whatever was the extra money, he would have taken to his spouse and his children. Now here his day's inventory is gone, which means first and foremost, he cannot pay back the moneylender. So what does he do? Then it occurred to me that it is very simple. That man will simply go back to the moneylender, pay an even higher penalty, take one more loan, and 3 o'clock in the morning, he will go back to the Hosur Bangalore load for another cartload of tomatoes. Because this man has resilience. And we need to build that quality of resilience. And we need to understand that if that man can deal with the ups and downs of life, because he has no choice. You and I have choice. He has no choice. Now, in the same vein, you and I all the time go and on a nice evening eat, by the roadside, these things called golgappas. Okay, I don't know, what is it called? Golgappas. And imagine that you are a golgappa seller. And imagine that, suddenly out of nowhere, there is a hurricane on Bay of Bengal and non-stop rain for 2 days. What happens to you? Your entire inventory becomes soggy. Nobody eats those kinds of street food when there's a downpour. So we need to look at people like these and then draw strength from them and say if they can spring back and if they can negotiate their terms with life, we are so much better provided for. And here's my last story. And this story is about globalization. I happen to be in the city of Cologne in Germany. This is shortly after the meltdown happened in Spain and Greece, and the entire continent of Europe was talking about a bailout package to these countries so that the euro will not melt. And there are two countries that were expected to bail out the countries that were going, down the difficult path. One happened to be Spain and the other Greece, but the fear was who is going to follow next. Now, magic was being expected from a man called Strauss-Kahn weeks before he fell into disgrace because of something that he did in New York City. But at that point in time, when Strauss-Kahn is shuttling between the continent and New York, and the bailout package is being discussed, Germans and French people are extremely worried that they would have to pay for the excesses done by countries like Spain and Greece, and maybe even Italy. And now those countries are on the verge of bankruptcy. So why should the taxpayer in France and Germany pay for the excesses and now the difficulties that these countries are having? Why not just come out of the European Union? So this was a moment of gloom and doom. Every day the newspapers talked about what will happen to the euro, what will happen to Europe as a continent. And back home I knew how much people are worrying about that, because the stockbrokers in Bombay Stock Exchange and National Stock Exchange are keeping an eye on what may happen to the meltdown of the euro, and they were having trepidations. And because they were having trepidations, the Reserve Bank of India was worried, and because the Reserve Bank of India was worried, the other banks were worried. So it was a vicious cycle. And in this situation, I land in Cologne and I get into a taxi. My most important request to the graduating students is never sit in a taxi without having a conversation with the taxi driver. Because it's one life. You will only drive in a taxi so many times. You will be in a closed environment with another human being who has a powerful story to tell you. So you should not miss the opportunity. Wherever in the world you are, if you are inside a taxi going from point A to point B, all you have to do is ask one question, and that question is, where are you from? The moment you ask that question, you will be surprised with the entire story that will come out of it. And the kind of questions that individual will ask you, the kind of wisdom that that individual will give you. So here I was, I got into the taxi and said, where are you from? So he told me where he is from. And then because of the gloom and doom that was going, all around. I said, so what do you think of the economic situation? So he looked at me in the rear view mirror while driving. And I braced to hear how he will respond, because I'm talking to a taxi driver on the economic situation of Germany and the larger economic situation of Europe as a continent, and then the larger economic situation of the world. So he looked at me through the back view mirror and said, sir, these situations are things for people with too much money in the bank to worry about. So I was shattered for a moment. Then he repeated himself. He said, economic downturns are things for those people who have too much money in the bank for them to worry about. So I told him, please explain what you mean by that. He said, look, next year, your business will still bring you to Cologne, whatever may happen. And next year, I will have my family to look after. And next year, I will still be driving this taxi. Then next year, you will sit in this taxi and I'll take you from point A to point B. It was a phenomenal lesson to me on what you can have control over and what you may not have control over. The fact of the matter is ups and downs will always be there. But the job of the world is to go from point A to point B. So don't get panicky. So I told you about a story in empathy. I told you about a story in inner resilience. And I told you about a story in outer resilience. With those, congratulations, all the best, go kiss the world. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I now request Professor Prabhakar to kindly address the gathering.
Our Chairman, Dr. D. Virendra Hegde, the Chief Guest of the evening, Shri Subrato Bagchi, who made a very interesting and heart-touching stories. I liked very much the story of resilience and empathy. I think you will carry this story and enjoy it, practice it, and successfully reach from A to B in your life's journey. Wish you all the best. I declare the convocation closed.